quickly. In the legislature, what do we see increasingly? Shameless gerrymandering to manipulate voting districts to make the election of a certain party more likely, right? Let's get ours in the House. Ours because we're white Kansans, or we were born here, or we're angry women, right? State legislatures, sometimes they game voting rights laws in order to discourage that tribe from voting. Congress shuts down the government, as it has a few times in recent years now, rather than pass a budget. Does this obstruction take place over matters of high principle? It'd be hard to maintain that with a straight face, given all the compromises that are embedded in the ensuing deals that they eventually work out. No, but we've got to send a message for our guys, right? Good optics with our base. Legislators routinely enact bills without regard for constitutionality, which, of course, they're sworn to uphold. Punt that responsibility, let the courts sort it out, while they cater to the demands of their folk, right? Our voters want this. Our farmers, our fundamentalists, they want this subsidy, this minimum wage, this tuition credit, so that's what we shall do. To hell with the rights of the businessmen affected in certain cases, or the taxpayers, right? Let's turn to the executive branch. Trump's trade wars, us against them. Team USA against Mexico or China or whoever, right? Imposing tariffs to favor our side. The casualty here is obvious. Every individual who benefits from free trade and whose rights to trade are sacrificed to the glory of Tribe USA, whoever that is. Think about Trump's xenophobic policy on immigration. Natives versus foreigners. Anyone not born on this soil is an invader, an insidious peril. And in recent days, even people born on this soil, maybe some of them are those, they have the wrong hereditary lineage, right? So we've got the same tribalism at work. Think about Trump's use of pardons. His first pardon was of that sheriff, I don't know how you say his name, in Arizona, Arpaio, right? Who had been found guilty of criminal contempt of court. Departing from long-standing practice, Trump didn't consult with lawyers at the Justice Department. He pardoned Arpaio basically because he's one of us, right? Arpaio plays for my team on immigration, and my team gets its way when I'm in the White House. Rather than the law must be followed, regardless of who's in power, because legal officials' power is supposed to be exercised in conformity with the law. Indeed, that power comes from the law. And you have to keep in mind here, Arpaio wasn't just some guy, right? He himself was a legal enforcement official, a sheriff, right? And he was found guilty of insubordination, defying court legal orders. That's what Trump sees fit to pardon, right? Dismissing rule of law. More recently, Trump revoked the security clearances of former defense and intelligence officials who criticize him. Again, basic idea, you don't show loyalty to me personally, you will be punished. In sum, Trump epitomizes the personalized politics of tribes. He continually uses the levers of government power to favor friends and threaten enemies. Jeff Bezos, the NFL, journalists, make that unfriendly journalists. Fox is in the right tribe, right? I'm sorry, I get so aggravated even talking about this. But let me just give you a couple of other examples from the Democratic side. Think back to toward the end of Obama's presidency. And what we've learned since about Russian meddling in the election and everything, and supposedly he had the evidence of, there was evidence coming to him at this. But we read, he didn't say anything about it for fear of looking partisan. He didn't want to be perceived as trying to tip the scales in the election toward Clinton. In other words, our tribe and the image of our tribe, the Democrats in this case, these are more important than electoral integrity, right? Than the legitimacy of an election. In other words, I'm sorry, I think I just said that. How did I say this? In other words, he elevated projected perceptions of what team he was on as more important than seeing to it that our elections were honest. I think this is a really perverse implication of the importance that tribalism has assumed in our psyches and in our thinking. But I can even think back to President Clinton, Bill Clinton, when he first came to office. He was quite proud of the fact that he was going to assemble a cabinet, some of you are old enough to remember, that looks like America, right? Group representation is all. Competence, ability, relevant experience, yeah, maybe, but she has the right headdress, right? It looks good, playing to these tribalist instincts. The judiciary. Battles over judges have deteriorated into another arena for tribal combat. The principal aim is getting our guys on the courts. Our guys distinguished by their policy preferences on guns, gays, abortion, regulations. The assumption is judges don't go by the law, the Constitution, they go by political preferences. And they should. So we got to get our political stripe on the bench. Rather than, no, seek judges who go by the law. I think a real nadir for the rule of law, and one of the most disturbing events of the last 2 or 3 years, which has been pretty much an unrelenting parade of disturbing events, I think a real low point for the rule of law was the Senate's refusal to consider Obama's Supreme Court nomination of Merrick Garland after the death of Scalia. This was completely partisan. This was in bad faith. It was a subversion of our legal system. But in the jungle of tribes, warring tribes, adherence to rules is for chumps. It's mano-a-mano combat. Closely related, people, individual citizens, evaluate specific court decisions on the basis of their agreement with their preferred, the agreement of those decisions with their own preferred outcomes, rather than on the grounds of the court's reasoning about the law. In other words, people demand the politicization of courts, as they demand of judges, do what our tribe wants. We disabled, we trans, right? Again, tribes should triumph over law. The courts, in turn, often succumb to these pressures. Individual justices will admit in speeches and interviews, sometimes, not all of them, but sometimes some of them will say, yeah, we didn't do that, would have been right, but the country wasn't ready for it, or that would be too divisive. In other words, the judicial thinking is, well, the Constitution would dictate ruling X, but the tribes can't handle it, right? We better not go there. They won't like it.